Energy is the one resource no one can hand to you, lend to you, or restore on your behalf. Every responsibility you take on, every conversation you enter without awareness, slowly drains it, leaving behind a quiet exhaustion that lingers long after the day has ended. Yet we behave as though it is endless, giving ourselves away to the world while forgetting that clarity, calm, and focus are the real indicators of a well-lived life. The Stoics recognized this truth. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that his thoughts and judgments formed a fortress of his own, and no one could enter it unless he permitted them. Imagine moving through your day with the ability to protect your energy, to treat it as the valuable currency it truly is, without guilt or apology. That kind of discipline does not make you distant or unkind. It makes you strong. It allows you to be completely present where it matters and detached where it does not. The power to decide where you give and where you hold back is not arrogance, it is self-mastery. And self-mastery is freedom. Often, the heaviest burdens are invisible. They are expectations, noise, obligations we accept without thinking, and the energy we give away unconsciously. Every interaction takes something from our clarity, yet most people move through life as if their energy has no limits, only to wonder why they feel drained, distracted, or disconnected. Real strength is not in saying yes to everything, but in developing the quiet discipline of choosing wisely, preserving inner peace while moving through life with intention. Think about the moments when someone's words create space, when there is a pause that allows your mind to breathe. You leave the conversation feeling lighter, as if your inner world has expanded. That feeling is rare but unmistakable. At other times, interactions feel heavy. Each word pulls at your attention, leaving behind a subtle exhaustion that stays long after the moment has passed. This is not by chance. It reflects an unseen economy of energy, a silent exchange in which we participate without awareness. Every interaction either replenishes or drains, expands your spirit or contracts it. And often, the difference lies not in what is said, but in what you carry within yourself before, during, and after. Boundaries shape this flow. When they are defined, energy moves with direction. When they are unclear, it leaks away unnoticed, carried off by expectations, anxieties, and the unspoken demands of others. Setting boundaries is not an act of resistance, it is an expression of self-respect. Knowing what belongs to you and what does not make you harsh, it makes you intentional. Stoicism teaches that disturbance does not come from events themselves, but how we interpret them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have control over your mind, not external events. Realizing this is where strength is found. Energy is not only physical, it exists mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Allowing it to be taken without discernment is the same as trading clarity for the comfort or convenience of others. Many people respond automatically, saying yes without thinking, overextending themselves, over-explaining, and assuming their resources will never run out. But every moment has consequences. Every action, every word, every mental commitment requires energy, and that energy is finite, valuable, and deeply connected to the quality of your life. Reflection begins with awareness. Some people drain energy unintentionally, not out of harm, but because they themselves are depleted and searching for what they lack. Others drain through habit, expectation, or unconscious behavior. In every case, the failure to protect oneself comes from not recognizing that energy is real and essential. Every interaction, every request, every obligation is an investment, one that either returns clarity and growth or leaves behind exhaustion and tension. The intentional evaluation of your interactions teaches the mind to keep what matters close while engaging only where something meaningful is possible. Energy, like virtue, cannot be spent carelessly without consequences. There is also a temporal side to all of this. Energy is used in the present moment, but its effects stretch forward, shaping future encounters and influencing later choices. The memory of draining experiences, the repeated fatigue caused by weak boundaries, changes perception, shortens patience, and weakens the ability to think clearly. When the mind is already burdened, responses become automatic instead of intentional, reactive instead of thoughtful. But when boundaries are established and maintained, energy moves in patterns that support both involvement and healthy distance when needed. This reflects the Stoic view of impulse and desire. Freedom comes from mastering what is within your control, while fatigue comes from surrendering to what lies outside it. Living this way is not withdrawal from life, it is full participation from a place of clarity. Self-awareness is essential to the process. Internal drains, such as anxiety over judgment, imagined obligations, and compulsive comparison, often consume more energy than external circumstances ever do. Stoicism teaches that the mind gives shape to reality. If your attention is given away unconsciously to worry, regret, or fear, then your energy is already being spent before action even begins. Practices like meditation, journaling, stillness, and time in nature help restore the inner world. They make reflection possible without reaction, observation possible without depletion, and presence possible without exhaustion. When you begin to recognize these hidden patterns of energy loss, you reclaim your agency. You stop allowing subtle drains to determine your focus, mood, or decisions. When these insights are integrated, experience itself begins to change. Protecting energy is not avoidance, it is the deliberate placement of your presence where it truly matters. It is choosing full engagement in work, relationships, and efforts where there is real impact, while withholding yourself from what offers little in return. Living by your own measure instead of the endless demands of expectation preserves clarity and deepens freedom. Every intentional act of engagement strengthens resilience, sharpens attention, and builds the mind's ability to act with purpose. The daily practice of consciously choosing where your attention goes becomes both practical and philosophical. It becomes an expression of Stoic mastery over self and circumstance. As you think about your day, your week, and the people around you, ask yourself what is consuming your energy without necessity. Ask what truly deserves your full presence. Every moment you reclaim becomes a step toward clarity, autonomy, and freedom. By protecting your energy, you protect the mind, the body, and your capacity to act in line with your values. Presence that is given consciously is power. A life lived with this awareness becomes deliberate rather than reactive, intentional rather than scattered. If you want to keep refining this skill, learning how to guard your energy, strengthen your boundaries, and live with greater clarity and purpose, consider subscribing. To subscribe here is to make a conscious choice in favor of your growth, to honor your mind and your presence, and to move one step further toward living freely and intentionally. The practical implications of this are quiet but significant. Awareness of energy flow gives rise to discernment in relationships, obligations, and commitments. It allows a person to invest selectively, extending presence where it can truly matter and withholding it where it cannot. There is a deep paradox within this. Saying no to certain things, stepping away from certain exchanges is not a retreat from life. It is a conscious turning toward a life in which your contributions are more genuine, more present, and more powerful. Every choice to allow or deny the flow of energy shapes the environment in which thought, creativity, and action are able to flourish. The discipline of observing and responding in this way turns draining interactions into opportunities for renewal and growth. And the most profound truth is that these choices do not depend on perfect external circumstances. They are available to anyone willing to examine, reflect, and act with intention. Self-reflection in this area must be ongoing. The Stoics recommended a daily review of one's thoughts, responses, and interactions, always recognizing the difference between what can be controlled and what cannot. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Every conversation and every interaction becomes an opportunity to exercise judgment. Not all drains on energy come from manipulation or ill intent. Many arise from routine habits, expectations, and unconscious patterns in both ourselves and others. The important realization is that we are responsible for our role in these exchanges. If exhaustion keeps returning, then it is necessary to ask not only who is involved, but also what role we ourselves are playing in allowing it, what patterns keep repeating, and how they can be interrupted to preserve clarity and presence. Awareness of this subtle economy of energy also cultivates equanimity. By observing without judgment and without overreacting, the mind learns to distinguish between what deserves attention and what does not. Emotional fatigue, irritation, or distraction become information rather than commands. The act of observation itself becomes liberating. It separates the self from automatic depletion and creates the space needed for conscious choice. This practice closely reflects the Stoic cultivation of inner freedom, the recognition that while the outer world remains unstable and unpredictable, the care of one's own mind, attention, and presence always remains possible. Preserving energy is not avoidance, it is mastery. It is the quiet, deliberate cultivation of the ability to act and to live fully. Ultimately, recognizing energy as a limited and valuable resource changes the way you see all interactions. To move through life with awareness means noticing not only the depletion that comes from others, but also the unnoticed drains caused by self-neglect, distraction, and misaligned priorities. Energy becomes the measure by which you evaluate engagement, and boundaries become the tools by which that energy is protected and directed. Carl Jung observed that your vision becomes clear only when you can look into your own heart. Whoever looks outside dreams, whoever looks inside awakens. Awakening, in this sense, is the realization that self-respect, clarity, and presence cannot be separated from the careful stewardship of energy. To ignore this truth is to drift through life reactive and depleted. To embrace it is to live deliberately, with intention, and with the freedom to act according to one's values. By attending to the movement of energy, by observing interactions and their effects, and by making careful decisions about where and how your presence is given, the mind develops resilience, insight, and the ability to act with purpose. Seeing energy as a kind of currency creates a framework for how we approach relationships, commitments, and daily interactions, transforming the ordinary into something meaningful. Every choice becomes both an expression of inner strength and an investment in future capacity, ensuring that the spirit is not weakened by careless dispersion. In the subtle discipline of observing, reflecting, and protecting, life gains coherence, focus, and a quiet but unmistakable power. The mastery of energy becomes the mastery of life itself, the cultivation of freedom, and the realization of the Stoic principle that the only true control we possess is over ourselves, over the mind, and over the careful stewardship of our own attention and presence. Some people enter a room and leave behind a presence, not something visible, but something felt, a shift in the atmosphere, almost magnetic. Their presence sparks ideas, opens possibilities, and leaves behind a lightness, as if the environment itself has subtly aligned into something more harmonious. Others, though, equally present in physical space, leave a different imprint. Their words carry weight, their pauses hold tension, and there is an invisible pull that drains attention and focus. In these encounters, energy is constantly exchanged, often without awareness. One interaction restores, another depletes. The difference is rarely about intention or malice. It is a reflection of awareness, reciprocity, and alignment. It is also a mirror, showing how we choose to engage, how much we give, and how much we allow to be taken. Relationships are rarely truly one-sided, yet they can often feel that way. The habit of overextending, of giving more than one can sustain in order to maintain harmony or avoid conflict, gradually erodes the self. Every compromise, every extra effort carries an energetic cost that cannot easily be recovered. There is no immediate signal, no visible ledger tracking the balance, yet the depletion is real and cumulative. This is why it becomes essential not only to examine the nature of others, but also to reflect on our own patterns. Are we unintentionally enabling those who take more than they give? Are we contributing to our own exhaustion by valuing comfort or approval over presence and clarity? Awareness is the first correction. By observing these dynamics, we begin to understand that energy flows are both finite and reciprocal. This realization grants the power to choose how and where energy is directed. To observe without judgment is to gain insight. Stoicism teaches that external events carry no inherent meaning. It is the mind that assigns significance. A person who drains or uplifts does not inherently possess that power. It is our interpretation, our willingness to absorb, and our consent to give away attention that creates the outcome. As Carl Jung noted, until the unconscious is made conscious, it will guide your life while you believe it is fate. Patterns of overgiving, overpleasing, and overextending are precisely what allow others to draw from your energy without awareness. When these patterns are brought into awareness, the flow shifts from passive loss to active choice. Each interaction becomes deliberate, not automatic. When energy is spent without reflection, patterns begin to form. Social conditioning, habits of empathy, and early beliefs about obligation teach us to give freely, often at the expense of ourselves. Repeating this pattern conditions both mind and body to function at reduced capacity, creating a persistent undercurrent of fatigue that carries into every new interaction. It is no longer just isolated moments of exhaustion, it becomes a baseline state, subtly weakening clarity and emotional stability. Recognizing this cumulative effect changes perception entirely. It is no longer about isolated experiences, but about seeing the entire structure of how energy moves through your life, how each relationship, each task, and each expectation shapes your internal state. With this awareness, you move from passive participation to intentional stewardship. There is also a time dimension involved. Every interaction influences not just the present, but what follows. Draining experiences leave behind traces of distraction, irritation, or reduced focus that affect future interactions. On the other hand, nourishing experiences expand capacity, leaving behind calm, inspiration, and clarity that carry forward. By consciously observing these patterns over time, you begin to see clearly which relationships support your clarity and which diminish it. The discipline lies in noticing early before depletion accumulates and adjusting accordingly. Taking responsibility for your role is essential. It is easy to blame others for exhaustion, but the Stoic perspective emphasizes self-mastery. Over-engagement is not only the result of external pressure, it is often a habitual and unconscious choice. By noticing the moments when attention is given automatically, when presence is extended without thought, you regain control. Energy is not truly taken, it is permitted. Choosing where, when, and to whom you give your energy becomes both a practical strategy and an ethical way of living. Every conscious decision strengthens autonomy and builds resilience. This awareness transforms relationships. They shift from being sources of depletion into opportunities for meaningful exchange, from obligation into intentional engagement, from unconscious patterns into conscious dialogue. Reflection on these dynamics brings balance. Energy is finite, and preserving it is essential for clarity, focus, and fulfillment. By observing what drains and what restores, by consciously directing attention, and by maintaining boundaries that respect your limits, life becomes more coherent and intentional. Moments of engagement gain depth, while distractions and drains lose their influence. The interaction between awareness, reflection, and choice creates a framework where relationships are navigated with purpose, energy is preserved, and personal capacity grows stronger. Through this process, the mind develops stability, the spirit builds resilience, and each interaction becomes an opportunity to practice discernment and presence aligned with your values. Energy is rarely taken directly by others. More often, it slips away through our own unnoticed habits. Every time you say yes out of fear, remain silent to avoid judgment, or exert effort to prove your worth, you create subtle leaks. At first, they are almost invisible, disguised as responsibility, kindness, or loyalty. But over time, they accumulate into a persistent fatigue that weakens clarity and presence. The mind becomes clouded. Decisions feel heavier, attention lingers where it should not, and often this depletion is mistakenly blamed on others, when in reality much of it was given away unconsciously before external circumstances even played their role. Practices of self-awareness become essential. Journaling, meditation, and mindful pauses reveal patterns of energy loss, bringing to light the moments where energy was unnecessarily given. These moments are not failures, they are opportunities for understanding and adjustment. By reflecting on when energy was lost and identifying the internal reasons behind it, you begin to distinguish between true obligation and unnecessary surrender, between external demand and internal consent. This clarity strengthens autonomy and creates a more deliberate approach to interactions and commitments. It allows you to reclaim presence and establish boundaries without guilt, aligning your actions with your values instead of reflex. Reclaiming energy does not require withdrawing from life. It requires discernment and courage. Silence no longer is driven by fear, and presence is no longer driven by compulsion. Choices about where to invest energy become intentional, aligned with purpose rather than habit. You gain the ability to engage deeply where it matters, while stepping away from what drains you. This reflects the Stoic principle of judgment, understanding what lies within your control and accepting what does not. When energy is consciously preserved and directed, it becomes a tool for intentional action rather than something lost unconsciously. The role of perception is central. The mind interprets every experience and assigns meaning. When energy is given away without awareness, perception aligns with exhaustion, reinforcing the cycle. But when awareness interrupts that pattern, the cycle breaks. You begin to distinguish between meaningful engagement and unnecessary effort. Decisions become grounded in observation and reflection rather than impulse. Energy transforms from something passive into something directed. This awareness builds resilience, steadiness, and clarity, allowing you to engage with life without being diminished by it. Ultimately, caring for your energy becomes an act of self-respect. Every moment of awareness, every decision to reclaim what was previously lost, strengthens autonomy and reinforces boundaries. Protecting your presence is not selfish, it is necessary for integrity, clarity, and authentic engagement. Through disciplined awareness and reflection, patterns of energy loss are revealed. This creates the opportunity to act deliberately instead of reactively. In doing so, freedom is regained, presence is restored, and the mind becomes stronger. As Marcus Aurelius emphasized, control over oneself is the highest form of power, and by managing your energy consciously, you exercise that power with intention. Recognizing internal drains completes the foundation for deliberate living. By understanding that exhaustion often comes from habitual choices rather than external forces, you regain control over how you engage with life. What was once lost unconsciously